I want to talk about some attributes of yarn. And specifically, I want to talk about slub shape. So the vertical yarn in the fabric is called a warp yarn, W-A-R-P. That is typically where you will find a slub. A slub is a deviation in the thick and thin spots of the length of the yarn. So that will kind of give you character vertically. And you can see some of that here. These fabrics where that warp yarn has a huge amount of shape to it. Or you could be very clean, where there's very little character vertically into the fabric. Here's an example of a cleaner fabric, a much smaller slub shape. You can additionally take that slub shape and put it into the weft and create what's called crosshatch. See that line going back and forth? That is a thick and thin spot in the length of the yarn going into the weft yarn, W-E-F-T, is the horizontal yarn. It's a classic example of a crosshatch fabric. And depending on how much slub we put into the yarn, and then how much of that slub we put into the warp and the weft in combination, creates the different balances visually in the face of the fabric. And what I have here is examples of all the same size of yarn. These are all 7 singles. But you can see very clearly in some of these that they would have very different attributes into the fabric, even though that on the average length of the yarn is the same size yarn. At Silver Jeans, they work intimately with me. They go down to the selection of the yarn shape, the fiber. Very few brands do that, but Silver does that. Silver takes it to the nth degree, the most basic part of building the product, which is unique, which is quite unique, because a lot of brands don't take that much depth and care to think about the end consumer, how they are going to feel in this product, how they are going to see themselves in this product, how they want to wear this product, and how they want to move through this world and have an outward statement to society. Look at me, my silvers work beautifully. And it's because they think so hard and deep about that decision. So we've dyed our yarn, we've spun it, we've dyed it. Now we're going to weave it. So there are 3 main weaves that really bring out the beauty and the attribute and the character of denim. One is the most traditional of all. It's a 3x1 right-hand twill. So remember we were talking about our warp yarns and our weft yarns. So in a 3x1 right-hand twill, we go over 3 weft yarns with a warp yarn and under 1, over 3, under 1. And you can see in this DID pattern how that plays out. It will make a twill line that goes off to the right. Now, the character of a 3x1 right-hand twill. It is the strongest of the 3 weaves. It will raise the twill line up. They tend to be slightly more beefier, hardier visually. It is the most traditional from the very beginning of denim, back at the turn of the century when it was gold mining. That was the weave that was used again and again and again and again, was a 3x1 right-hand twill. I wanted to move on into fabric construction just briefly. Silver does a great job at putting attention into really stringent requirements in tensile and tear strength, durability, wash fastness, no matter what it is from a physical performance standpoint, they reverse engineer from the beginning with me to give a product that is suitable for the end result. So for example, a typical 13-ounce denim would be 66 warp yarns per 1 inch by 44 weft yarns per inch. Silver will work with me in relationship to trying to find that right balance between strength, durability, fluidity of body, hand feel and loftiness, elongation, all to make sure that in that end product, your needs are met perfectly. Okay, I wanted to briefly speak to the fundamentals of fit. I'm not talking about body shape and I'm not talking about drape. What I'm talking about is the unique space of stretching and recovery of that fabric. So there's two things at play. We can have an extremely elastic fabric that doesn't recover very well, that might bag, or we can have an extremely elastic fabric that has a huge amount of compression in the way that it pulls back that might deform fit. So at Silver, there's a huge balance in finding that space between the silhouette, the wash, the season that balances out the amount of comfort you need in the fabric's elongation, its ability to recover its original shape, then also the amount of compression or squeeze the fabric is going to have on the silhouette itself. And that squeeze becomes really important because if the squeeze is very tight, it can deform the fit, even if the body is right for it. If the squeeze is perfect, then it gives you mobility, it gives you functionality of fit, it gives you a beautiful look in the mirror, it gives you everything.
So I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about why we choose certain fabrics for design and how that thought process goes into the design and creation of all of our different fits. In Silver, you know, just because we do men's, plus size, ladies, we have different clientele and different silhouettes. So we do such a broad range of product. It's very important to understand the stretchability, the fiber content, the costing of our different fabrications, but also the shade of indigo and how that wash down experience happens from garment to garment so that we can ensure that we are creating what we want as a finished product. So the very first item here is a men's garment. This is from our Frontier Strong. Here I've created a denim with Michael that is very streaky. This is for more of a Western wear clientele. And in order for it to have the functionality that it doesn't wear out, I've actually infused nylon into the warp so that we have abrasion and flex abrasion resistance. So this is actually 3 times stronger than our normal stretch denim, and it will wear, especially like if you think about it, a fellow, they're in a saddle, so you're always kind of rubbing the inner legs. We built nylon into that so that it won't wear out. The slub pattern is also much more vertically enhanced to give you that kind of wash down. Here I've done a stronger compression and a heavier weight. And also lastly, because I thought, you know, people work or they're riding horses in warm weather, we've actually infused moisture wicking and temperature control here so that the wear in spring or summer would feel cool. So that was one of the key features of this fabrication. And also working with a shade that is very deep, but then it'll go to the green cast as you wash it down because that's kind of the vintage fades that we wanted to create. This is an example, another example of a men's fabrication where I wanted to do very dark washes. So you can see here, not a ton of grin through. That means that the weft yarn that we spoke about earlier isn't coming through and it's a much flatter look. And the slub is only really popping out in our hand sanded or dry process areas. So here, again, it's for shades that I might want to create that are very black in cast. And then as I wash it down, stay a little bit more on the gray side. Now, alternatively, this is a fabrication where I want it to be green. So vintage washes from a certain area have this lovely green cast. That's what I'm wearing here today as well. This is, I think, the Ariana green shade. And again, it would be not as dark, but as I wash it down, I'm getting these really beautiful casts to it. So moving into the ladies collection, it's a little bit more complex in ladies just because we have a plethora of silhouettes, right? If you have a skinny leg, you want to pick something that's extra comfortable, that really doesn't bag out, it doesn't have any, it always fits close to the body. So here I would use something that has a higher stretch percentage, or as Michael called it, elongation, and a lot of recovery. Going into wide legs, I want something that is drapey, but also holds its form. So that was really a huge challenge to create something that was comfortable, had stretch, and mimicked what would be 100% cotton, but I also wanted something that would destruct, right? So here is an example of something that is more of a comfort stretch. It's about an 18% stretch. We created this fabrication so it's actually mimicking acid wash without having to acid wash it. I wanted all of these garments to look very vintage, so just using a stone wash, we're able, by adjusting the weft shrinkage, to create this kind of marble or cantiloping effect. Another key feature here is ability to destruct. I don't want, if you're using a fabrication, for example, that has a super high stretch, when you destruct, it might pucker just because the lycra has so much pullback or spring back. So we design actually even the weft yarns to ensure that when we're picking it, that it will grind and do what it needs to do, especially when you're doing something in a wide leg. It's not as close to the body, so that effect would be much more obvious. New to this season are these kind of longer length shorts, and I wanted to create something that's a little bit more A-line effect. So if we used a really lightweight or super stretchy fabrication, this would collapse basically on the wear, and you're not getting the intent of the silhouette. So it's very important, for example, in this case, to use a stretch fabric that has enough body and weight so you could get the structure, but then I've infused it with lyocell, so you're still getting, even though it has the weight to keep the structure of the silhouette, you're getting that very soft and luxurious hand feel. And here we've done it in the warp, so as the consumer touches it, it just feels brushed and very soft against their hands. Another silhouette that would be very similar but in a long pant would be the horseshoe jean, or what I'm wearing in the barrel silhouettes. Again, typically done out of 100% cotton, but in silver we've infused it with just the right amount of stretch. We really wanted to ensure that the silhouette had that arc on the outseam so it didn't collapse. And lastly, this is something that we're doing for the spring-summer season. You can see it's just very drapey, soft, fluid, lightweight, very open. So here we wanted to create something that still had a bit of stretch. It's actually more of a mechanical stretch in this case, just for strength, and then also this fluidity of movement. So it's a summer jean. So as you can see, you have to know as a denim designer how to work not only with the fabrications, how to do wash, but then translate that into fit and what you're really trying to create for the end consumer.